Aleppo Offensive, 2016. In the annals of the Syrian civil war, few battles were as decisive and brutal as the Aleppo Offensive of 2016. What unfolded in the ancient city of Aleppo was not just a military operation. It was a ruthless campaign that reshaped the balance of power in Syria and marked a turning point in the conflict. At the heart of this operation was the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, orchestrating a deadly symphony of destruction alongside Syrian regime forces, Russian air power, and a vast network of Shia militias drawn from across the region. For the IRGC, the Aleppo offensive was not merely about recapturing territory. It was a strategic masterstroke aimed at securing Iran's influence over Syria and solidifying its position as the dominant power in the region. By 2016, Aleppo had become the epicenter of the Syrian conflict. Once Syria's largest city and a thriving economic hub, Aleppo had been reduced to ruins by years of brutal fighting between Assad's forces and a coalition of opposition factions, including Free Syrian Army, FSA rebels, Islamist groups, and al-Qaeda-linked militants. For the Assad regime, losing Aleppo would have been a devastating blow, potentially signaling the collapse of the regime. For Iran and the IRGC, however, Aleppo was more than just a battlefield. It was a strategic prize that would determine the future of Syria and Iran's influence in the region. The IRGC had been deeply involved in Syria since the early days of the war, but by 2016, its role had escalated to direct command and coordination of the most critical operations. General Qasem Soleimani, the commander of the IRGC's Quds force, personally oversaw the planning and execution of the Aleppo offensive. Soleimani's presence on the front lines was a testament to the importance that Iran placed on securing Aleppo, and his ability to rally and coordinate a diverse coalition of forces was a key factor in the campaign's success. The IRGC's strategy in Aleppo was multifaceted and ruthless. First, they flooded the battlefield with a formidable array of Shia militias drawn from across the region. Hezbollah fighters from Lebanon, Iraqi militias such as Kataib Hezbollah and Asaib al-Haq, Afghan mercenaries from the Fatemiyun division, and Pakistani fighters from the Zainabiyun brigade were all mobilized to form a multinational Shia fighting force. These fighters were not merely auxiliaries. They were battle-hardened, ideologically driven militants who viewed the battle for Aleppo as a religious crusade to defend Shia holy sites and protect Assad's Alawite regime from Sunni jihadists. Iran's role in coordinating this diverse coalition was crucial. The IRGC provided extensive training, logistical support, and battlefield intelligence to ensure that these disparate militias operated as a cohesive force. Iranian advisors, many of them veterans of the Iran-Iraq War, embedded themselves with these militias, offering real-time guidance and ensuring that the battle plan unfolded according to Iran's strategic objectives. The IRGC's influence extended to every level of the campaign, from tactical decision-making on the ground to high-level negotiations with Russian commanders and Syrian officials. The IRGC's most critical contribution to the Aleppo offensive was its ability to fuse irregular warfare tactics with conventional military operations. Shia militias, trained in urban combat and guerrilla tactics, spearheaded the ground assaults, while the IRGC coordinated with Russian air power to provide overwhelming aerial bombardment that flattened opposition-held neighborhoods. The combination of relentless airstrikes, siege tactics, and close-quarters urban combat created a nightmare scenario for the opposition forces trapped in Aleppo. The siege of Aleppo was one of the most brutal and devastating campaigns of the Syrian civil war. The IRGC and its allies implemented a strategy of encirclement, cutting off all supply lines to opposition-held areas and subjecting civilians to a merciless blockade. Food, water, and medical supplies became scarce, and the humanitarian situation deteriorated rapidly. The IRGC's strategy was clear: starve the opposition into submission and break their will to fight. As the siege tightened, the IRGC and its allied militias, unleashed a wave of destruction that obliterated entire neighborhoods. Barrel bombs, cluster munitions, and artillery barrages rained down on civilian areas, reducing Aleppo's ancient heritage to rubble. Hospitals, schools, and markets became targets in a deliberate campaign to terrorize the population and force the opposition to surrender. The IRGC's use of indiscriminate violence was not a byproduct of the campaign. It was a calculated strategy designed to crush resistance and send a message to other rebel-held areas that defiance would be met with annihilation. By December 2016, after months of relentless bombardment and ground assaults, Aleppo fell to Assad's forces. The opposition's last stronghold in the city was overrun, and the remaining fighters were evacuated under a Russian-brokered ceasefire. For the IRGC, the victory in Aleppo was a crowning achievement, a demonstration of Iran's ability to orchestrate a complex and brutal campaign that secured Assad's grip on power and cemented Iran's influence over Syria. But the Aleppo offensive was more than just a military victory. It was a geopolitical triumph for Iran. By securing Aleppo, the IRGC ensured that Iran's corridor of influence, stretching from Tehran to Beirut, remained intact. The victory gave Iran a dominant position in post-war Syria, allowing it to dictate the terms of any future political settlement and ensuring that Assad remained beholden to Tehran for his survival. The IRGC had not only preserved its strategic ally, but had also positioned Iran as the kingmaker in Syria's future. However, the cost of the Aleppo offensive was staggering. The human toll was catastrophic, with tens of thousands of civilians killed and hundreds of thousands displaced. The city, once a jewel of Middle Eastern culture, lay in ruins, its infrastructure shattered and its population traumatized. The IRGC's relentless pursuit of victory had turned Aleppo into a symbol of the Syrian regime's brutality and Iran's ruthless determination to impose its will on the region. The Aleppo offensive also left a lasting legacy of sectarian polarization and resentment. The IRGC's heavy reliance on Shia militias to crush Sunni opposition forces deepened sectarian divisions, fueling animosity that would continue to plague Syria for years to come. Iran's sectarian policies in Syria, epitomized by the battle for Aleppo, alienated Sunni communities and created a breeding ground for future insurgencies. For the IRGC, however, the victory in Aleppo was a validation of its strategy of proxy warfare and asymmetric dominance. The battle had demonstrated Iran's ability to project power beyond its borders, mobilize a transnational Shia militia network, and dictate the outcome of a major conflict. In the eyes of the IRGC, the Aleppo offensive was not just a battle. It was a declaration that Iran's influence in the Middle East was unshakable, and that Tehran was prepared to go to any lengths to defend its vision of regional hegemony.